President Trump told us a couple different times he thinks these gang members are thugs who are focused on destroying people and their homes. And he says he won the election in 2024, at least in part, on a promise to get them out of the country.
We can't let a judge say that he wants him. He didn't run for president.
The president continues arguing he's got the authority to deport alleged gang members, and Judge James Boasberg does not have the authority to stop him.
And we just can't let that happen. It'd be so bad for our country.
The president is also claiming these alleged gang members are terrorists, in the same category as people vandalizing Tesla property nationwide.
The people that finance it are, in my opinion, in just as big a trouble as the people that are setting the match and setting the fires.
If Tesla vandals are arrested, the president suggests they could serve time in the prisons of El Salvador, which have become so recently famous for such lovely conditions.
They could get 20 years in jail, and they'll get it. I'll tell you, there's going to be no leniency and there'll be no pardons.
As the president and the defense secretary unveiled a new sixth-generation fighter jet, the Boeing-built F-47. So secret, this is all the Pentagon can show?
I was wondering, how much are you going to show when they came in with that? You see a wheel in the front? That's about it.
Elon Musk took Doge to the DOD for an in-person meeting, and DOD officials disputed New York Times reporting that he would be shown China war plans.
On the record, that is completely fake. Elon Musk is just coming over here for a visit.
Musk writes, I look forward to the prosecutions of those at the Pentagon who are leaking maliciously false information to the New York Times. They will be found. The president explains why Musk shouldn't know about U.S. military posture towards China anyway.
I don't want to show that to anybody, but certainly you wouldn't show it to a businessman who is helping us so much.
President Trump also appeared to learn in real time that rescued NASA astronauts didn't get overtime for all the extra time in orbit. They got $5 a day per diem. For 286 days, that is $1,430 in extra pay. Is there anything the administration can do to get them, to make them whole?
Well, nobody's ever mentioned this to me. If I have to, I'll pay it out of my own pocket, okay? I'll get it for them. I'll take care of that. I like that.
And Elon Musk joined President Trump a few minutes ago on Marine One. He and the whole team are heading to Bedminster for tonight ahead of a trip tomorrow to Philadelphia and the NCAA Wrestling Championship. Shannon?
I feel like the astronauts should get a little bit more than that on your calculations, but we'll see what happens. By the way, I know, Peter, on his way out of the White House this afternoon, you were able to ask the president a little bit more about those deportation flights.
Yes, and President Trump has no regrets about the way that his administration has moved to get these alleged gang members out of the country. If there was a flight tonight full of accused gang members and somebody called and said, Mr. President, I know that this is still being adjudicated, but we can get these guys down to El Salvador right now, would you say that that's okay?
I would say that I'd have the Secretary of State handle it because I'm not really involved in that.
It's unclear just exactly how eager Secretary of State Marco Rubio is to test this federal judge's will.
Well, to say that tensions are high is an understatement. You know, the problem here is that the Trump administration has some good arguments, but it shouldn't overplay its hand. For example, they're arguing that this is what's called non-justiciable, that simply the court doesn't have a role here. That may be an argument that will sway some judges, but it's not an argument that allows you to ignore court orders. And so they have to be very careful here to make those arguments on appeal, not to treat them as a dead letter because you don't recognize the authority. Now, having said that, a lot of these judges have, in my view, exceeded their authority, including the imposition of national injunctions. And on that, I think that the Trump administration has a winning case to make. Various Supreme Court justices, including Justice Kagan, have objected to these district court judges issuing these national injunctions. So I think that there's good arguments here, but there also has to be some care. Part of the problem the Trump administration had the first term is a lack of discrimination on targets. They have to be careful on what they want to fight on and what they want to yield on.
Carrie, you know, obviously we're waiting to see if they try to invoke this state secrets. One of the central issues here, as I understand it, is whether or not there was a tie. So if you're going to use this Alien Enemies Act from 1798, you have to prove that there's some sort of invasion from another country, and you have to prove that it's tied to the government of that other country. Now we've had very strong suggestion from the president and others related to this that they believe that Maduro controls TDA to some extent and that he wants them to destabilize the country. Do they need to prove that, or did they make a mistake in evicting these people in this manner and then having to prove that?
Well, DOJ has been arguing that Tren de Aragua is effectively a front for the Maduro regime. Right. And one of the things they point to is that in Venezuela, when Tren de Aragua is in a particular area, they effectively set up a quasi-government over the territory. And so they point to that and say, look, this gang is ruling a lot of Venezuela. And then, of course, in 2022, when Joe Biden was effectively ignoring our border laws and the like, they came pouring over, and we've seen the effects of that. You know, I will say this, Martha, about the state secrets doctrine, and on that, the judge gave the Department of Justice a Tuesday deadline as to whether they're going to actually invoke that or not. They're going to have to file a declaration as if they're going to do that. You have to remember that State Department official, a career guy who's been at the State Department since 1971, he filed his own declaration last weekend. And he said that what we saw over the weekend with these planes was the result of weeks of sensitive negotiations between top State Department officials, including Secretary of State Rubio, with the governments of El Salvador and Venezuela. And that's not something this judge was a part of, nor would he have access to. So part of me wonders about those conversations they were having with those governments, and if they are using that in part to suggest they may in fact invoke this doctrine so they don't have to reveal everything the judge wants them to. Now, of course, he thinks it's a pretext. He says, just answer my questions about the timing. But it's certainly an interesting situation to keep watching.
Yeah, you know, just on the broader strokes here, Jonathan, I think that most Americans look at this and they don't understand why we would want to keep gang members like this in the country. Certainly the president has said that. Why would anyone want to keep these people out if they're dangerous to the country, or to bring them back if they are dangerous to the country?
No, that's obviously a concern for many Americans. The fact is that we can get these individuals out of the country. I think that the Trump administration will ultimately prevail on most of these efforts at deportation. The only question is the manner in which it occurs. And the issue with state secrets is an example of that, and how you approach this. I've litigated state secrets cases from the other side from the government. And this is an argument that the government tends not to make in court, because the state secrets privilege or doctrine is so important to them. They don't want to risk it. There's a lot of debate on the edges of how far it extends, what you need, whether you need a cabinet level official to issue these declarations. I'm not too sure the prize is worth the powder here to put the state secrets doctrine at risk. So this is one of the issues that I'm concerned about in how this is unfolding. There's always a danger of doubling down on bad hands. Ultimately, the Trump administration will win this game in terms of deportations. This is well within Article 2 authority. I think the president is correct. I think that many judges have overstepped their bounds, but they have to be careful here, not to put things at risk that they don't have to put at risk in court.
Yeah. So, Carrie, the argument is that there are other ways that they could have removed them that would have saved them this headache with the courts. But you brought up earlier today a similar confrontation between Bill Barr the first time he was Attorney General. This was under George W. Bush with the boat people. Bush wanted to protect the country essentially from this invasion, whatever. I don't know if he used that word at the time, of Haitian boat people. How did that work out? And is there a lesson in that for this today?
Well, there's some comfort to be taken from that, right? There's nothing new under the sun. These have been issues that have been playing out for years. But yes, then Attorney General Bill Barr, I believe he had 3 stays issued against the Department of Justice as they were trying to find a way for these boat people to not enter the country illegally via these boats. And ultimately, he won at the Supreme Court. And so we'll see what happens here.
It's a detailed timeline. Here's what we know so far. 6:45, Boasberg gives Trump a verbal order to turn around deportation flights. It was about 45 minutes later, 7:26 p.m., that the written order was released. But then 10 minutes after that, the first plane lands in Honduras, and a half hour later, the plane number 2 lands in El Salvador. He also wants to know about the timing of signing this proclamation about declaring them to be enemies of the state. Tell us about all that.
Yeah, he asked some questions and he said, first of all, I want it to be clear, as you understand it, my order didn't say that you had to release these people back into the U.S. The attorney acknowledged you're correct. My order didn't say you couldn't deport people. Right, Your Honor, you're correct about that. What I'm saying is you can't be using the Alien Enemies Act. So you have other ways to deport people. So why, if you weren't worried about the legalities of this, did you sign this proclamation? He says kind of in the dead of night, these people were already clearly rounded up and ready to get on these planes and go. So he's saying to the attorney, if you felt like it would stand up against my judicial discretion, why did it play out that way? And this attorney didn't really have a lot of great answers for the question, saying, I wasn't involved with the operational aspects of this, but he did acknowledge, saying, you could infer, you know, those implications that maybe it didn't look like we felt like we were on solid legal ground here.
But the Trump administration, I mean, how many, what's it got, 46 injunctions against it? It's got almost 50 injunctions against it. Might have rightly thought, look, if we announce this and we do it, somebody's going to run to a friendly judge somewhere and try to stop us from doing it, knowing that what they believe are activist judges are willing to stick their noses into all kinds of matters, including ones of foreign policy and national security, which they have no jurisdiction over.
Yeah, and this is the judge, obviously, who's at the center of a couple of these really big cases, and this question about whether he can shut down the executive branch. That's been the criticism from those who support what President Trump and the administration are trying to do here. They haven't yet gotten to the question in this hearing about the state secrets exception that they may use. The Trump administration has said, we didn't respond to the questions that you gave us by the deadline yesterday because we're having cabinet-level discussions about whether we may invoke state secrets, that privilege in this case, that would potentially block us from having to turn over information. They haven't gotten to that yet.
One of the things that they're not telling the court is the names of the people who were deported under the Alien Enemies Act. This is call for number one. This is what President Trump has posted about this on Truth Social. He said, no district court judge or any judge can assume the duties of the President of the United States. Only crime and chaos would result. Make America great again. So he's basically saying, this is my purview. This is not the purview of the judicial branch of government. Get your nose out of my business.
Well, listen, there were those on the left during the Biden administration who complained about this kind of thing, that one district judge, there are hundreds of them across the country, in one specific district can shut things down, not only in their district, an executive order, a law, a policy, but for the entire country. During the Biden administration, there was a lot of anger and frustration when a judge in Texas shut down some access to one of the two pills that are used in abortions that are sent through the mail, the medicated abortions. Right. They were angry about it then, so they get that this happens, but it's happened a lot more with the Trump
administration. Do you recall that after that ruling on mifepristone, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on national TV and encouraged the Biden administration to ignore a ruling from the Supreme Court? I mean, this is a district judge, and the planes were already in the air, and the White House says out of American airspace and in international airspace. And
he wants to know exactly what time that happened.
Exactly, yeah. Real quick, who's on Fox News Sunday this week?
So we've got Governor Wes Moore with us, one of the rising party, stars in Maryland, a Democrat. And so we'll ask him who's leading the party. Where do they go from here?
Minutes into the 80-minute hearing, Judge James Boasberg expressed frustration with the Department of Justice for not following his order to return flights full of suspected gang members from Venezuela to El Salvador and stop any future flights. He asked point blank the DOJ attorney today why was this proclamation signed in the dark and then these people rushed onto planes? The only reason to do that is if you know it's a problem and you want to get them before suits are filed, meaning lawsuits. With clear tension in his voice, Boasberg, named by Republican and Democratic presidents to judicial seats, said the government used, quote, intemperate and disrespectful language in the written briefs, saying he had never seen that tone in other DOJ filings. The judge said that the government wasn't being terribly forthcoming, but was determined to get to the bottom of whether there was deliberate defiance of his order. Administration lawyers repeatedly said they acted fully within the law, Shannon. The government has not formally confirmed President Trump has invoked the state's secret privilege, an executive move that would allow the government to withhold what it deems national security information to the courts. Federal lawyers say cabinet-level discussions are ongoing. And last week, Boasberg ordered the planes full of those suspected gang members to be turned around from that planned trip to El Salvador. Two of them, though, already outside U.S. airspace. They landed in El Salvador. The government claims that those planes were in international airspace, could not legally be returned to the U.S. And those suspected gang members now in a Salvadoran prison. Officials removed them under the 1798 act called the Alien Enemies Act that Bill mentioned, citing an invasion of the United States. A DOJ spokesperson tells Fox News that the DOJ continues to believe that the court's superfluous questioning of sensitive national security security information is inappropriate judicial overreach. On Monday, an appeals court judge will hear arguments over this very issue. And late this afternoon, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche announced that he is opening up a criminal investigation involving the leak of classified information involving Tren de Aragua. He said it's a way of getting involved in trying to stop President Trump's agenda.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.